It is summer 1914. The First World War raged on in Europe. To the east, a German light cruiser entered the Bay of Bengal, navigating the Molucca and Buru Straits and the Banda Sea with calculated precision. Hindered by Dutch neutrality, its captain's audacious plan unfolded. Capitalizing on British confusion, Emden achieved tactical surprise, disguised ingeniously as a British cruiser. The bay, typically a hub of peacetime maritime activity, unsuspectingly bore witness to Emden's predation. The Emden, under Captain Karl von Müller's command, went on to have one of the most famous cruises of the war. Amidst the geopolitical tumult of the early 20th century, the fate of German cruisers played a pivotal role in the theater of war. In 1914, Germany strategically deployed its naval assets overseas, including Vice Admiral Maximilian Count von Spee's East Asiatic Squadron, comprising the Scharnhorst, Gneisenau, Emden, Leipzig, and Nuremberg. Concurrently, due to colonial and strategic considerations, other cruisers like the Königsberg, Dresden, and Karlsruhe were dispatched to far-flung regions. The German plan envisioned cruiser warfare against enemy vessels, raiding coasts, bombarding military establishments, and disrupting communication infrastructure. Each cruiser captain bore the responsibility of independent decision-making, guided by the imperative to inflict maximum damage upon the enemy. Von Spee, in particular, received orders to maintain the squadron's freedom of movement and not fall into the trap of a blockade. Meanwhile, the Admiralty redirected their efforts, leaving Tsingtao exposed. They felt confident in entrusting the protection of British trade in the northern regions, including Hong Kong, to their Japanese allies. The consequences of these decisions were profound. They inadvertently allowed von Spee to slip through the blockade. He altered their plans, opting for a clandestine voyage to the west coast of America. The Emden departed soon after. Captain of the Emden, Karl von Müller's initial actions included patrolling the shipping lanes between Vladivostok and Nagasaki. It was August 4th when he captured the Russian steamer Roasan. It was Germany's first captured vessel of the war. Müller converted it into the auxiliary cruiser Cormoran. Then he sailed to rendezvous with Spee, who was organizing a journey eastward at Pagan Island. On August 12th, the Emden rendezvoused with the East Asiatic Fleet at Pagan. In the face of an extended Pacific cruise, Müller raised doubts, instead advocating for the detachment of a light cruiser to the Indian Ocean, a notion promptly endorsed by Admiral von Spee. It was decided the Emden would venture into the Indian Ocean, disrupting trade and acquiring coal from captured prizes. The Prince Eitel Friedrich and Cormoran were dispatched to Australian waters, although Spee had limited expectations for their success due to their lower speed and higher coal consumption. The rest of the squadron sailed eastward from Pagan on August 13th. On November 7th, Tsingtao fell to a combined Japanese-British attack. British Vice Admiral Martin Jerram of the East India Squadron, now free to pursue the German forces, faced uncertainties, especially about the whereabouts of the entire German East Asiatic Squadron. Meanwhile, Müller planned to enter the Indian Ocean through the Molucca and Buru Straits and the Banda Sea, avoiding the usual steamer routes. However, the Dutch enforced their neutrality rigorously, serving as a brake on German freedom of action. Still, he succeeded. Müller, capitalizing on British confusion and their assumption he was sailing east with the German East Asiatic Squadron, achieved complete tactical surprise as he emerged in the Bay of Bengal. The bay, typically a hub of normal peacetime maritime activity, had resumed its routine traffic without anticipating the presence or likelihood of a raider. Emden, disguised ingeniously with a false funnel to masquerade as a British cruiser, proved a formidable predator. Under the cover of darkness on September 10th, the Greek collier Pontoporos, laden with British government freight, fell victim to the Emden. Recognizing the strategic value of the captured vessel, Müller decided to convert the Greek collier into a collier for Emden's use. In a surprising turn of events, the captain and crew of the Pontoporos willingly joined Müller's crew in exchange for compensation. aligning their fate with the marauding German cruiser. Emden's subsequent forays unfolded over the ensuing days. Emden seized control of 5 British vessels. Of the captured ships, 4 met a watery demise, consigned to the depths. The 5th vessel, commandeered by Müller, reluctantly served as a carrier for the crews of the sunken prizes. In a relentless pursuit of disruption, Müller extended his dominion over the maritime expanse. Moving northward, Emden reached the Ganges estuary by September 18th. Then, an Italian ship, temporarily detained and subsequently released by Emden, unwittingly became the messenger heralding the German warship's presence to a British steamer. The Admiralty, belatedly realizing the threat posed by Emden, detained vessels in the Bay of Bengal, though von Müller had already secured his coal supplies for the impending hunt. Caught amidst the chaos of troop transports, Jerome swiftly mobilized naval assets in pursuit of Emden. Hampshire, the Japanese light cruiser Chikuma and Yarmouth were dispatched to quell the maritime menace. Simultaneously, the armored cruiser Minotaur set course for the west coast of Sumatra, and the Japanese cruiser Ibuki headed to the Cocos Islands, anticipating Emden's potential refueling stops. As Emden cruised near Rangoon on September 18th, while British cruisers scoured the northern waters in search of Emden, Müller veered westward, charting a course straight for Madras. The element of surprise played into Emden's hands as it approached the unsuspecting city on September 22nd. In a dramatic night assault, Emden, aided by the illuminated buoys and city lights, unleashed a 10-minute barrage on Madras. The oil tanks erupted in flames, steamers were damaged and one was sunk. The impact was profound, halting shipping in the Bay of Bengal once more. Emden's uncanny streak of good fortune persisted. Evading pursuers, the cruiser altered its course, rounding Colombo's southern tip on September 24th. The ensuing days witnessed a spree of sinkings, captures, and strategic decisions by Müller, further complicating the maritime landscape. Realizing the need to deflect suspicion and replenish resources, Emden set a course for the Maldive Islands, leaving in its wake a disrupted Indian Ocean trade and 14 sunk vessels. On October 2nd, she arrived in Diego Garcia. At this seemingly oblivious outpost, news of the war between Britain and Germany had yet to arrive. The welcoming reception allowed Emden to undergo essential maintenance and refueling for a week. On October 10th, Commander von Müller, undeterred, charted a course west of Colombo, evading the pursuing British cruiser Hampshire, which misjudged Emden's location. Seizing and sinking a British ship near Minicoy on October 15, Emden continued its raiding spree, sinking vessels and employing diversions. In total, another 5 vessels were captured or sunk up to October 20th. The British naval units, in a relentless pursuit, orchestrated a multifaceted effort to locate and neutralize Emden. Hampshire cruised south of Ceylon, Yarmouth escorted French transports off Colombo, Chikuma monitored the Strait of Malacca, and the Russian cruiser Jemchug ventured from Penang to the Maldive Islands in search of potential German coaling bases. Emden's recurrent ability to elude its pursuers left the British Naval Command disheartened, prompting questions in prominent publications such as the London Times about the Admiralty's strategies. Meanwhile, fueled by an unbroken streak of fortune, Müller, urged by one of his lieutenants, resolved to gamble on a clandestine assault on Penang. His anticipation was set on discovering Allied warships and cargo vessels nestled in the harbour, ready to be thrown into chaos. He resolved himself to deal a devastating blow against the Allied powers. After coaling at Nankore, Emden sailed for Penang on the night of October 28th, adopting deceptive measures with a dummy funnel to approach the harbour at dawn. In the pre-dawn darkness of October 28th, Captain Karl von Müller executed his deception, propelling the Emden toward Penang at 20 knots, augmented by a fabricated wooden and canvas funnel to mimic an English cruiser. This ingenious ruse fooled the unsuspecting patrol launch, allowing the Emden to slip past undetected. Little did the Allied forces suspect the tempest about to be unleashed upon their unsuspecting harbour. The entry was facilitated by lights, including those at the entrance, casting an eerie glow. As the sun ascended, it revealed the roadstead's commercial vessels. Nearing the warship anchorage, Müller's attention was seized by 4 luminous lights on the starboard bow. At a distance of 1,200 yards, they resolved into the quarterdeck lights of a warship, later identified as the Russian cruiser Jemchug. The Russian crew was unaware and dormant. Remarkably, a Russian sailor aboard the Jemchug, as recounted in the Siam Observer on November 9, 1914, witnessed the foreign warship's ominous approach. When challenged, the mysterious vessel claimed to be the Yarmouth coming to anchor. The bluff allowed Müller to navigate his ship to a strategic firing position merely 300 yards from the target. The Russian cruiser's guard, however, detected a telltale sign, the foremost funnel trembling, shouting a warning. A shot was fired, missing its mark. Then, Müller ordered the torpedo officer to launch a retaliation. Simultaneously, Emden unleashed a relentless barrage, striking the Russian cruiser below the after funnel. The torpedo hit the Russian cruiser's port quarter, flooding the engine room. The cruiser's deck soared from the explosion and crumbled. Emden continued its onslaught, turning the sides of the Jemchug into a sieve. Unsatisfied with the uncertainty of the cruiser's fate, Müller commanded a second torpedo, hitting under the bridge. As Jemchug listed heavily, Emden continued its assault. A broadside, then another, further crippled the sinking cruiser. In a tragic state, engulfed in flames, a colossal explosion ensued, leaving only a masthead when the smoke lifted. Müller, regretfully acknowledging the devastation, made a prudent decision to depart promptly, foreseeing potential confrontation with other vessels. The Jemchug, battered by relentless shelling, succumbed to the Emden's onslaught, leaving 91 officers and men dead and 121 wounded. The noise of battle had alerted other vessels in the harbor. The French torpedo cruiser d'Iberville and destroyer Fronde had sprung into action. Rapidly approaching, they fired salvos against the Emden. Not able to gain enough speed to come within range, they did not pose a threat. As Emden sped away, a British steamer, the unarmed SS Glenturret, was intercepted near the approach buoy. However, before the Emden's boarding party could complete their mission, an unexpected threat emerged, an unknown warship approaching from the northwest. The Glenturret was allowed to proceed into Penang, carrying von Müller's apologies for the inadvertent firing on the unarmed launch. The unknown vessel was swiftly identified as a French destroyer, the Mousquet. As the destroyer approached, Müller ordered his men to open fire. The Emden fired multiple salvos, rapidly reloading to continue the bombardment. Commander Felix Therouan's destroyer valiantly resisted, but the Emden had scored several direct hits. As the engine room flooded with water, the Mousquet succumbed in a mere 10 minutes. Emden's boats were deployed to rescue survivors. In total, 47 men were lost, including Commander Therouan. 36 were wounded. By 8 a.m., Emden embarked on a northwesterly course, eluding a pursuing French destroyer in a sudden rain squall. The Pistolet, chasing the Emden until 10 a.m., slowed due to an overheated bearing. The Fronde, trailing the Pistolet, had even less success. By the time the d'Iberville limped out on one engine, she could only search for Mousquet survivors. Once again, Emden had vanished, prompting the Allies to ponder their fortune in losing no more than the Jemchug and the Mousquet that morning. However, Emden's journey, fraught with unforeseen challenges, was far from over. It is late October 1914. In the Indian Ocean, a lone light cruiser was sailing away from his adversaries. Its captain, Korvettenkapitän Karl von Müller, had just completed a raid on the Allied harbour at Penang, sinking a Russian warship and a French destroyer. However, time was running out for his ship, as Allied vessels were dispatched to hunt him down. Despite this pursuit, von Müller charted a course for the Cocos Islands. The noose was tightening, and the Emden's hourglass was rapidly draining. In the waning months of 1914, the Allies found themselves grappling with a threat to its maritime lifelines. Two elusive German cruisers haunting the Indian Ocean. While SMS Königsberg had achieved moderate success in disrupting trade near Aden before being trapped in German East Africa, the second cruiser, Emden, commanded by von Müller, posed a greater challenge. In a span of just 2 months, Müller had captured or sunk over a dozen Allied steamers, a Russian cruiser, and a French destroyer. This relentless campaign led to a cascade of consequences, a distraction that drew most available Allied warships into the hunt for Emden, escalating insurance rates, soaring commodity prices, and a cautious grounding of shipping activities in ports. Emden's most disruptive achievement was the raid on Penang Harbour. She sank the Russian Jemchug and French destroyer Mousquet. Despite a brief engagement with the Pistolet and Fronde, the Emden evaded pursuit. The Allies, still reeling from the assault, acknowledged the fortuitous escape of their unprepared vessels in the harbour. Additional warships were dispatched from far and wide to track her down, among them the light cruiser Gloucester from the Mediterranean and the Dartmouth and Weymouth from East Africa. For Australian authorities, a deeper concern loomed: the safety of the first contingent of Australian and New Zealand troops awaiting transport to the European theatre. Amid initial delays, stemming from apprehensions about the presence of German warships in the Pacific, the 28 Australian transport ships began assembling at Albany in the final week of October. There they awaited the arrival of 10 New Zealand transports and 4 warships, dispatched by the British Admiralty to provide a crucial escort. Convoy 1, bearing 21,528 men and 7,882 horses, finally set sail on the morning of November 1st. Unaware of the Australian convoy's existence, but cognizant of the mounting search efforts against him, Captain von Müller pivoted towards the remote Cocos Islands. He aimed not only to damage the cable and wireless station, but also to divert English cruisers away from the Indian Ocean, where he planned to raid the routes between Aden and India. On the night of November 8th, von Müller's Emden intersected Convoy 1's course less than 40 miles ahead, heading to Direction Island the following morning. At 5:50 a.m. she arrived. Employing a deceptive measure, Emden hoisted a false fourth funnel in an attempt to masquerade as a British cruiser. However, the vigilant Superintendent Darcy Farrant of the Eastern Telegraph Company, alert to the threat, promptly broadcasted a warning upon sighting the Emden. The 50-strong armed landing party, led by Emden's First Lieutenant Helmuth von Müller, swiftly initiated their tasks upon reaching Direction Island of the Cocos Islands. Their primary objectives included disabling the wireless telegraph station, cutting the cable to Perth, and causing other disruptions. In a meticulous operation lasting around 2.5 hours, the landing party destroyed electrical machinery, motor engines, switchboards, and telegraph houses. Von Müller personally attended to cutting the cable to Perth, while the wireless mast and spare cables were also targeted. Approximately 50 miles to the north, HMAS Melbourne, the lead ship of the convoy escort, intercepted the distress call just after 6:30. Its captain, M.L. Silver, immediately took action, expecting either the Emden or the Königsberg. The captain directed the closest escort, HMAS Sydney, to prepare for full speed towards Cocos and investigate the unfolding situation. Under the command of Captain John Glossop, HMAS Sydney held a decisive advantage over the German cruiser Emden. Being slightly more modern, Sydney, a Chatham-class cruiser, boasted a larger tonnage, longer length, and heavier armament, including 8 6-inch guns. In contrast, Emden, a Dresden-class cruiser, was smaller with 10 4.1-inch guns. Sydney arrived at around 9 a.m. A miscalculation by Glossop and British naval authorities regarding the effective range of the German 4.1-inch naval guns allowed Emden to make the first hits of the battle just after 9:40. Sydney reported engaging the Emden in a fierce duel at a distance of 8,700 meters, lasting for an hour and a half. Maintaining a calculated distance, Glossop skillfully used Sydney's superior speed and heavier weaponry. Emden managed only a handful of hits, and as Sydney's gunnery prowess took its toll, the German cruiser's firepower waned. The Emden suffered severe damage, losing funnels, masts, and catching fire. Von Müller acknowledged Sydney's fire superiority, and with the Emden's steering gear malfunctioning and serious casualties among the gun crews, the prospect of reaching torpedo range dwindled. By 11 o'clock, only one German gun remained operational, and Sydney's relentless barrage ignited a fierce fire on Emden's aft, causing the vessel to succumb under the onslaught. Incapable of retaliation and striving to preserve lives, Captain von Müller gave it his all to steer Emden toward North Keeling Island. At 11:20, Emden was grounded near the island. After disengaging from Emden, Sydney pursued its collier, SS Buresk, which had entered the fray. Sydney fired its guns at Buresk, forcing it to stop. Glossop could not prevent Buresk's crew from scuttling their vessel as they abandoned ship. Glossop picked up all sailors from the Buresk before turning his vessel around once again. Returning to Emden at 16 o'clock, Glossop was surprised to find the German ensign still flying. Following an inconclusive exchange of signals, he reluctantly fired 2 more salvos. The Imperial ensign was hastily lowered, and the Germans displayed a white sheet on the quarterdeck. He sent a small boat with a letter. The letter politely requested the surrender due to Emden's compromised state, emphasizing the dire circumstances ashore and the intact condition of the sender's vessel, promising humane treatment for the sick and wounded upon compliance. Due to his obligation to check the situation at Direction Island first, Glossop couldn't offer assistance to the German survivors until the following morning. He would soon find out that all Brits on the island were safe, and the German landing party hid on the island, preparing a rather unconventional journey home. Emden, with a crew of 316, suffered 134 fatalities and 65 wounded in the battle. Sydney incurred 4 fatalities and over a dozen injuries. Von Müller, along with the surviving crew, was taken aboard the Sydney. The Sydney then proceeded to Colombo with the prisoners and wounded. Despite the initial delay, the compassionate care extended to the German wounded by the Australians played a crucial role in diffusing animosity. During the rare opportunity for close association in the days following the battle, officers from both ships concluded that their duty was to engage in combat, but no malice was harbored. Glossop, showing respect, allowed the German officers to retain their swords and took great care not to offend their sensibilities. However, the news of the battle was met with unrestrained jubilation elsewhere. The demise of the Emden marked the conclusion of its audacious 3-month raiding campaign in the Indian Ocean. Von Müller's chivalrous conduct and raiding achievements earned him the Iron Cross First Class. The Odyssey continued for Kapitänleutnant von Mucke, the Emden's first officer, and his landing party. They escaped on the schooner Aisha, sailed to Padang in the Dutch East Indies, transferred to the German steamer Choising, and eventually reached Yemen. Surviving Bedouin attacks, they reached Constantinople in June 1915, where they were welcomed as heroes. In total, Emden's adventure lasted over 3 months. It sank 16 British steamers, totaling 70,825 gross tons. It also sank the French destroyer Mousquet and the Russian warship Jemchug. The Russian captain and first officer were put on trial for letting the disaster unfold. The Emden's legacy, a mix of daring raids and Müller's gentlemanlike conduct, left a lasting impression on the naval history of World War I. If you're interested in the fate of SMS Königsberg, I created an entire video about that and the largely forgotten raid on Zanzibar Harbour in East Africa. It is September 20th, 1914. The First World War had just broken out. and across the globe a strategic cat-and-mouse game played out between the German Kaiserlich Marine and the British Royal Navy. In the serene embrace of Zanzibar's harbour, an on-duty guard aboard HMS Pegasus stood watch. The ship, having recently returned from a diplomatic mission to German East Africa, underwent quiet repairs, and a hushed calm enveloped the crew in their restful repose. As the guard maintained a vigilant but tranquil watch, the harbour echoed with the peace of routine. Then, at just past 5 a.m., the tranquility shattered. In the distance, a rogue German light cruiser, the Königsberg, seized the element of surprise. It unleashed a relentless barrage. The on-duty guard, abruptly thrown into the chaos, found himself at the forefront of the Battle of Zanzibar. The First World War had reached the East African coast. At the onset of the First World War, the Germans possessed a significant naval threat with forces stationed abroad, although the actual impact on British trade was limited. Germany, boasting the third largest empire globally, had colonial possessions scattered across the globe. Despite the empire's vastness, the European population was small, and most colonies operated at a deficit. In Europe, the British and French naval blockade primarily focused on preventing German forces from breaking out of European waters, and the overseas German forces posed a potential threat rather than an immediate one. One critical naval base for Germany was Tsingtao, a strategic possession from which the East Asiatic Cruiser Squadron, under Vice Admiral Maximilian Graf von Spee, operated. Spee's flagship, the Scharnhorst, and its sister ship, Gneisenau, were state-of-the-art armoured cruisers. These vessels, capable of reaching 20 knots, were renowned for their gunnery prowess. Spee's squadron also included the light cruiser Emden, while other light cruisers such as Nuremberg, Leipzig, Dresden, and Karlsruhe patrolled the Pacific and Atlantic Oceans. Additionally, German forces included the light cruiser Königsberg, stationed on the east coast of Africa. Apart from these major vessels, Germany, like other colonial powers, had a collection of gunboats, surveying vessels, river gunboats, and minor crafts unsuitable for significant naval encounters. As war erupted, German vessels in the Far East sought refuge in Tsingtao. Others, like certain river gunboats, found sanctuary in Chinese ports. However, many German naval vessels led a fugitive existence, terrorizing the high seas and preying on Allied merchant convoys. 2 months later, the British found themselves caught off guard when the German light cruiser Emden, under the command of Captain Karl von Müller, executed a bold and unexpected move. The assumption that the Emden was part of von Spee's squadron led to a grave miscalculation. Müller, capitalizing on this confusion, achieved complete tactical surprise as he emerged in the Bay of Bengal. The bay, typically a hub of normal peacetime maritime activity, had resumed its routine traffic without anticipating the presence or likelihood of a raider. Between September 10th and 14th, Müller unleashed a devastating onslaught, sinking 6 steamers and capturing 2 more for use as colliers. Panic and fear gripped the region, not in the least because the British were aware of another German light cruiser operating from Germany's only base on the East African coast, Dar es Salaam. In those late summer months of 1914, the light cruiser Königsberg haunted the waters of East Africa and played a risky game of cat and mouse. Under Fregattenkapitän Max Loof's command, the cruiser held orders to disrupt traffic at the Red Sea entrance. The lead ship of her class, the light cruiser, was commissioned in 1907. With a displacement of 3,814 tons and a speed of 24.1 knots. It boasted 10 10.5 centimeters and 10 5.2 centimeters guns, along with 2 torpedo tubes. Including all officers and enlisted men, its crew numbered 322. It had 3 sister ships, the Nuremberg, Stuttgart, and Stettin. These played crucial roles in various battles, with Nuremberg sinking the HMS Monmouth at the Battle of Coronel on the other side of the world. With the Königsberg based in Dar es Salaam, commander of the Cape Station, Rear Admiral Herbert Kinghall strategically deployed his ships, the old and slow Hyacinth, Astrea, and Pegasus to counter the potential threat. The most important vessel for the Königsberg's fate was HMS Pegasus, a Polaris-class protected cruiser. Launched in 1897, weighing 2,740 tons at full load, the cruiser, powered by 7,000 IHP through 8 Reed water tube boilers, achieved a speed of 20 knots. Armed with 8 4-inch guns, 8 3-pounder guns, and 2 18-inch torpedo tubes, it boasted a crew of 224. Sailing from Dar es Salaam on July 31st, the Königsberg deftly eluded Captain John Alexander Ingles's Pegasus, becoming a lurking threat. Worrying about this, the Admiralty's order on August 12th redirected Astrea to join flagship Hyacinth, leaving Pegasus vulnerable and unsupported at Zanzibar. But that did not matter, for King Hall had a plan up his sleeve that would cripple the Königsberg. 1 week later, Captain Alfred Charles Sykes, aboard the cruiser Astrea, appeared in front of Dar es Salaam. Without warning, Sykes obliterated the wireless telegraph station, severing Germany's vital communication link. Panic set in as Dar es Salaam's harbour master, gripped by fear, scuttled the floating dock. With one bombardment, Astrea denied the Königsberg both a lifeline and access to the safety of the lone German port in the region. From then on, the Königsberg faced a litany of challenges, crippled by coal shortages. The British prevented the Collier König's departure and preempted fuel purchases. Despite these issues, Luff remained combative. Following a week of prowling the trade routes off Aden, he sank the SS City of Winchester. Realizing the British would send reinforcements, Luff steered his vessel southward to anchor safely in the delta of the Rufiji. Battling the monsoon and hiding along the African coast, Luff's men lived a fugitive existence, desperately scavenging for coal, hindered by logistical woes. Meanwhile, Pegasus sailed to Bagamoyo in German East Africa on a diplomatic mission, before returning to Zanzibar harbour for engine repairs. Slumbering in Rufiji, Luff learned of Pegasus's whereabouts and its vulnerability. He set sail, planning to confront the vessel. In the first light of the 20th, the vigilant armed tug HMS Helmuth, strategically positioned by Ingalls to safeguard the island, found itself caught off guard. The element of surprise was wielded with precision, catching even the most seasoned officer of the Pegasus unaware. The Königsberg managed to approach the Pegasus to around 8,000 meters, which left the German cruiser out of range for Pegasus's armaments, yet rendered the British vessel an ideal target for its superior guns. At precisely 5:15, the tranquility of the morning was shattered by the harrowing scream of 2 shells hurtling towards the dormant vessel. Startled from a deep slumber on the deck, an officer sprang into action, catapulted to awareness by the imminent danger. The Königsberg unleashed a relentless barrage. The Pegasus crew responded by scrambling to their designated stations, yet the German shell onslaught wrought havoc, inflicting a toll of destruction. The resonant thunder of the vessel's 8 4-inch guns echoed futilely, failing to bridge the gap that separated the vessels. Pegasus's shells dropped in the water. The Königsberg launched another volley. A shell landed perilously close to the guards on deck, mere yards ahead, casting a torrent of spray over the topmast. Ingalls ordered the raising of the white flag in an attempt to prevent total destruction of his ship. Communication faltered, with the fore control reporting an obstruction in relaying directives to the beleaguered guns. Urgent commands were redirected to the after control, but an eerie silence enveloped the vessel as the guns fell silent. Despite attempting to retaliate fire, the Pegasus had not even come close to scoring a direct hit against the Königsberg. Meanwhile, the Königsberg continued its slow approach until nearly 6,000 meters. Another salvo blew away Pegasus's white ensign as it tore more holes in her hull. Realizing the Pegasus was unable to reach the Königsberg, Ingalls understood the futility of resistance. Since the white flag went unnoticed, he ordered the lowering of the colors and disembarkment of the ship. As the flag was lowered, a universal sign of surrender, his ship was marked by a concluding volley of 9 rounds from the Germans. Amidst the chaos, as the ship listed ominously, all available lifeboats were deployed, and an urgent mission to disembark the wounded unfolded. According to a detailed account of an officer, a precarious decision loomed. Were those involved prisoners of war, or did the vanishing silhouette of the Königsberg afford them a reprieve? Ingalls, contemplating the sinking vessel, issued the somber directive to abandon the ship. The arrival of the steamer Kilwa offered a slim glimmer of hope, and the Königsberg's slow departure meant most of the surviving crew would not be captured. With this knowledge, pleas were made for a return to Pegasus, harboring aspirations of towing it to shallower waters. The Kilwa's arrival, though, failed to forestall the inevitable, and the slope of the shore facilitated the Pegasus's capsizing and descent into the depths. The Königsberg slowly sailed away, firing salvos against the HMS Helmuth during its departure. In total, Königsberg's attack lasted no more than 15 minutes. Yet the toll was staggering: 102 casualties, 42 dead, and the remainder left maimed and wounded. The Royal Navy had lost one of its Pelorus-class protected cruisers, unable to offer any resistance. In the wake of a hard-fought victory, Captain Loaf brought the German light cruiser Königsberg back to the Rufiji Delta for vital repairs, weaving through the maze of humid swamps and obstacles to outsmart the British pursuers. Intent on avoiding a repeat of the Pegasus tragedy, the Admiralty redirected cruisers Chatham, Dartmouth, and Weymouth to hunt down the elusive Königsberg. The cat-and-mouse game escalated as Captain Sidney Robert Drury-Lowe strategically sank the Collier Newbridge to block a Delta branch on November 10th. Cornered, Louf transformed the Königsberg into a fortress further upstream, opting for a strategic stalemate rather than risking immediate retaliation at sea. As December dawned, aerial assaults failed, pushing Admiral Drury-Lowe to endorse a renewed assault plan. Shallow draft monitors Severn and Mersey set sail from Britain, navigating treacherous channels on July 6th. However, when they engaged the Königsberg, the response was devastating. A renewed assault a week later left the Königsberg in ruins, forcing Captain Louf and his surviving crew to abandon ship. In total, they had lost 33 men in 7 months, mostly due to disease. The Königsberg's destruction marked the end of German naval defiance in distant waters. With no German warships venturing beyond familiar territories, the High Seas Fleet's operations were curtailed. The demise of the Königsberg, after 7 months of evasion, signaled a shift in the balance of power, limiting German influence beyond the North Sea. Thank you very much for watching this video. Please leave a like, it really helps out the channel. If there is a topic, battle, or person you would like to know more about, let me know your thoughts in a comment. I would also like to thank all my patrons and channel members for their generous support. If you enjoy House of History and you want to support my work, consider joining me on Patreon. For just $1 per month, you will already gain early access to all my videos without any in-video advertisements. Don't forget to subscribe. See you next time.